Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to share just a quick little clip from one of my clients who did my Inner Circle coaching program and was able to launch her first group program, book over 15 clients, improve her sales conversion rate on her discovery calls, and so much more. So check out this short little clip and then we'll dive into the episode.
What I so appreciate about Hailey is she has all the things you need to get tangible results. One of the main things she helped me with was the outline for discovery call, and one which was in my language where it just really clicked with my brain. It was organized in my brain and I enjoyed the discovery calls. I look forward to them, and my conversion rate is very high, like over 90%. And that led me to be able to think about and actually execute launching my first group program, which I did not even know was going to happen in this year. And I was able to launch it twice. I had launch details helped so much of the helping me with the emails, helping me with the content, helping me with the mindset that it takes to launch a program. I was able to get 6 people in the first round, 8 people in the second round. My email open rate is very high, like over 48%. And those are the things that happened when I started working with Hailey.
Today, I am live with Dr. Sheila Dean, and I'm very excited to talk with her today because we have a lot of listeners who are nutrition professionals, wellness professionals, dietitians, people of that nature. And so Dr. Sheila here knows a lot about that field and actually can help you further your career in that area because she works at, and I believe you're the co-founder, right? Or just
I am the co-founder.
Okay, the co-founder of Integrative and Functional Nutrition Certified Practitioner School, right? So let's get started, and why don't you share how you got into it and all the good things?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Hailey, and it's a pleasure. So I am the co-founder of the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy. And the Academy offers a certification, but really how the story is that, gosh, we're going on 20 years now. I was a conventionally trained dietitian trying to help my patients, and I felt like the tools that I was offering them, they were okay, but I felt like, basic calorie counts and low-fat diets just weren't cutting it. People were coming to me with pretty significant conditions, and the cases of autoimmune diseases were just exponentially rising. And I felt like I needed something more to try to get to the root cause of what was going on with these folks. And so I started doing some more research, my own due diligence. And at one point I was invited to back then we did seminars and I was invited to a seminar on this area called functional medicine, which I didn't really know that much about. I appreciated, and I think it's sort of self-evident that getting to the root cause of any health condition or any disease, is a good approach. But like I said, as a conventionally trained dietitian, it was really about managing symptoms, right? So I went, and I have to tell you that my mind was a little blown because I thought, wow, I was always told that there wasn't really any evidence to support some of these therapies. But then I thought, wait a minute, that looks like evidence to me. So I went back, and I was the nerd that looked up all those references, and I thought, okay, this is it was a real important moment for me, because I was on the verge of leaving my profession. I was going to go be a professional musician. I was going to leave.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was feeling really frustrated at not being able to, I just felt like I was skimming the surface. You know, people with cardiovascular disease and people with diabetes. And like I said, the cases of autoimmune was on the rise. So Hashimoto's and various intestinal disorders and various fibromyalgias and mitochondriopathies and all of these more complex, more sophisticated conditions, right? And so when I received this information, I started looking into it. I started staying up late and reading and researching and putting it all together. And to be honest, there were very, very few training programs out there. So I started kind of creating my own protocols, my own program. And what happened was I started getting a lot of dietitians and also students wanting to come to my clinic to shadow what I was doing in the clinic. So fast forward about a decade or so, I reached out to a colleague of mine, and Kathy Swift, who's also a dietitian. And I said, Kathy, we've got to create a training program here, because, you know, the number of people that are coming to me wanting, a higher level, sort of the next level in terms of, how to manage these cases and how to, dare I say, treat or not treat, a heal, right? The word heal, was a word that we didn't use, is rising. And so I had already been creating curriculum for many universities. And so the whole online training thing was becoming more and more popular and prevalent. More universities were starting to go online for a variety of reasons to attract more students. And I was being called on to develop curriculum for doctoral programs and master's programs. So I had been writing all this curriculum. Students and people were coming to me from all over the nation. So I think the next natural step, Hailey, was that we created the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy for primarily dietitians at that time. But today it's really open to health coaches as well, because, what happens is you get a certain amount of training, and then what you realize is you need more. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what our goal was really to now offer the highest level evidence-based and also practice-based evidence out there in a cohesive way that teaches the health coach and the dietitian, the specifics about therapeutic diets above and beyond just general diet recommendations, right? And depending on who you are, that may or may not be within your scope of practice. So through this training, it then becomes, well, you'd have to earn the board certification. And once you do, it becomes within the scope of practice for, in this case, let's say the health coach, to then make those therapeutic diet recommendations, to make those higher level nutraceutical and supplement recommendations beyond just a basic multivitamin, and most of all to order labs and interpret them. Obviously, no one's prescribing medications, no one's diagnosing anyone. That's always going to stay in the realm of the medical doctor, right, for the primary care physician. So that's basically what we do, and it's been really a breath of fresh air for health coaches and dietitians that want more than just to help their patients have or hold accountability and help, they want to take it to the next level. So that's what happened in a nutshell.
Wow, what a journey for sure. And it sounds like one way that people who work in wellness and nutrition might want to advance their career and be able to help their clients deeper is by being able to do those lab tests and be able to make recommendations about what you were calling the therapeutic approaches that you mentioned that maybe is out of scope of practice for them right now. So what would you say are some ways that wellness professionals who maybe are listening right now, how can they better support their clients with more evidence-based things? Like what would be a step they might want to take if they wanted to, I mean, obviously joining this program to be able to learn all of that and be able to have it in their scope of practice. But what are some ways that just in general nutrition professionals can improve the way that they help their clients?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the first step is I think health coaching is a wonderful first step. And so if anyone out there listening is not a health coach, I do think that getting those skills as a health coach is fantastic because, having all of this knowledge, right, you can create a fantastic plan on paper, or on the, these days not on paper, but right. But the coach is really important to help then take it from the plan into daily implementation, right? So I think that's a great first step. But then there's a barrier. And in order to be able to jump through that barrier so that for example, let's say the patient comes to you and she's got, she's a menopausal, 55-year-old, either pre or post or perimenopausal female. And she's coming to you because she's like, I've got a lot of these stomach issues. And by the way, my skin's looking, maybe some skin issues. And then let's say her third complaint is like brain fog. Where do you even start with that? So a health coach who wants to be able to go above and beyond helping their clients, helping their patients with issues related to daily accountability, behavior modification, which are paramount and imperative. But if you want to go beyond that, if you want to then be able to then say, okay, this is what I think needs to come out of your diet. This is what needs to go into your diet. You're going to have to get that kind of training. So that kind of training, whether it's through us, we like to call ourselves IFNA for short, IFNA, whether it's through IFNA or however, that training has to happen. So there has to be, so to answer your question, there has to be some basic training to start with on the different systems. There has to be some understanding of some medical terminology, and there's going to have to be an understanding of a root cause approach, which we teach a root cause approach at IFNA, because your client will come to you throwing all these, many different pieces of information, and your job, the coach's job, is going to have to be to parse through that and focus on what the next logical first step is.
Definitely. Yeah. And that can be overwhelming for some who are new, or they really are, feel the pressure to deliver. And so having more education about what would make the most sense for this client is always helpful. And what would you say are some shifts you're maybe seeing in the field, or exciting things that you're seeing with just what you're doing on a regular basis?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. First of all, there seems to be what I would refer to as a bottom-up approach as opposed to a top-down approach, meaning consumers are demanding this, right? Because government and industry can only go so far, but consumers are demanding that they be seen for the unique individual with their unique issues that they have and that they are, because too many people are slipping through the cracks. And when they go to their doctor, yes, they want to know if there's a medication or procedure, but a very important question that they ask that no one really knows how to answer. Well, the doctor that isn't trained is, what do I eat? Right. So I would say, to answer your question, number one, there's more and more direct-to-consumer services. More and more patients are demanding a root cause approach to their situation. They don't want to be boxed in a protocol. They want a unique solution for their unique situation. And by the way, there's a term for that. If you do a PubMed search or even Google the term the N of one, in studies, when a researcher wants to refer to the number of people in their study, they call it the sample size. They'll say something like N equals, and that could be whatever it is, whether it's 500 or 5,000. So the N of one is a phrase that refers to the sample size being one, meaning your unique needs. So I think that this unique and customized approach is absolutely a trend that's here to stay, right?
Yeah.
And the medical practitioner needing to know how to go about it in an organized way, because like you said, there's so many different pieces of information, and so we teach an organized way to go about it. We use an acronym called STAIN. STAIN, and essentially, and there's so much more to it, but in a nutshell, STAIN, S stands for stress. So the client comes to you and your job is to address the various stressors, and it's not just obvious stress, but it could be physiological stress. It could be, there's so many different angles to stress. And let's face it, stress alone can kill a person. Okay. Mm-hmm. So stress, right? T for toxins. And again, we're not just talking about obvious toxins like cigarette smoke or lead poisoning, but it could be toxins such as, anything that's foreign to a biological system is technically a toxin. And the technical term for that is called a xenobiotic, right? XENO is a prefix that means foreign. So anything that's foreign. So it could just be medications. It could be the artificial chemical sweetener in a food. It could be secondhand smoke. It could be mercury amalgam. So anything that is not natural to the biological system could technically fall under this category. It could be, chemicals in the cosmetics or in anything we inhale or ingest. Then there's A for adverse food reaction or reactions, right? So whether that's a food sensitivity or a food allergy, right? Or, anything in that category needs to be assessed. So what would you need? You need access to labs to be able to determine that. You can't just look at a person and go, oh, it's gluten, right? Oh, it's dairy. You can take a decent stab at it, but we have the saying, we say, don't guess, just test, right? So it's important to be able to have access, and not just to any test, but because there's so many labs. You're going to want to know, in this case, you might want to use this type of lab. And in that case, you might want to use a different kind of lab, depending on the way the patient's presenting, right? And so that takes some training. Then STAI for infection. So I think everybody in this day and age knows that there could be a viral infection, right? But there can also be parasitic infections, bacterial infections, fungal infections. How would you know? For example, if that person that came to you with those GI issues, in one case, you might just clean up the diet and go, all right, and, add a little fiber, clean up the diet, and off they go and they're feeling great. But in another case, it could be, wait a minute, there's an underlying infection going on. And to know, you may have to run, for example, a stool analysis or some other type of lab to be able to determine that. And so, being able to have those labs in your toolkit, right, as a way to be able to do some sleuth work, right, some nutrition detective work to figure out what in the world's going on. And then the last thing is N, in STAIN, N for nutritional deficiencies. The thing is, there's so many things that can cause a nutritional deficiency other than just not getting it from your diet. For example, we know that there's something called drug-induced nutrient depletion, or drug muggers. And what that means is if you're on a medication, like let's say you're on a statin. What's a statin? A statin is just a drug that lowers cholesterol, right? And here in the US, there's millions of people on those kinds of medications. Well, it's well known and it's well documented that statins cause what's called a CoQ10 depletion. So CoQ10 is an important nutrient that's important for the proper use of energy production, right? And it's in our muscles. So this is why some people who take statins have difficulty with their muscle pain. It's actually related to CoQ10 deficiency. So you have to assess for this, right? You have to assess for this. If a person's on birth control, oral contraceptives, she's going to have a folic acid depletion. If a person's on an ACE inhibitor, if a person's on, variety, and also the way medications interact. Yes, a lot of this is under the realm of the physician and various other healthcare professionals, but you as a health coach can now order these labs. Now, you're not going to diagnose the patient, right? You're not going to say, Mr. Smith, you have type 2 diabetes. Mr. Smith's going to walk in probably with the diagnosis already. They're going to walk in and you're going to be able to look deeper and understand what's going on. And then based on that information, you can then say, yes, I think that you need to get X out of your diet, but you need to put this into your diet, right? Or I think that supplement that you're taking, I think that needs to go out, and I think you should replace it with this. Or however that turns out. And then finally, listen, I think we need to run labs A, B, and C so that we can get a little bit more information. So you see, so you can do a better job understanding what ails the person to get at the root cause. And obviously this costs money, and obviously insurance doesn't always pay. But I tell you what, if you can help somebody for, like, let's say $1,000, let's say they pay $1,000 because they have to run labs and your consult costs. Okay, $1,000. Let's just say even $2,000. I'd like to see somebody for $2,000 in the traditional medical system get over their autoimmune conditions. People go to the Cleveland Clinic and pay $20,000, $30,000. You see what I'm saying? So I always tell people it's a bargain, and the reason why I want to put this out there is because sometimes health coaches are a little confronted by the fact that maybe their services aren't covered by insurance. But here's the thing: when you get trained and you can actually heal people will gladly write you a check for $1,000 or $2,000, because in the grand scheme of things, it's not much, and people pay more money on their shoes and their dinner. Okay, so don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid to know what you're worth when it comes to getting answers and getting results for people.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I have seen that. I even saw recently in a Facebook group, somebody was posting, like, I have this health, I don't know if it was like what the title was, but it was diagnosed, something with labs involved. And literally she was like, well, I have solved like all my health problems. This was amazing. And the comments on it, like, who is this coach? I need this. I need this. I need this. Help me. Help me. It was just crazy. So I think if you can solve the problem, or if you can really deliver, people will, they want to solve it, and they don't want to wait, and they don't want to have to go through, it's hard with the medical system sometimes to even get appointments and do all the things. And as you said, they're not trained necessarily in all the things that your students are. So where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about IFNA, all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, you could just go to the website, which is ifnacademy.com. And, I should tell people that, IFNA is not an entry-level course. You really need to have some kind of background. So, to be completely transparent, this program does not stop to explain to you what a carbohydrate is or what a protein is. There is an assumption that some very basic nutrition information and education is understood. But track 1, which is our foundational track, does start from the basics. Again, that said, it's not necessarily totally entry level. So just to clarify, there's 33 modules, y'all. This is not a weekend course. This is a real board certification, peer-reviewed, evidence-based, accredited. And these 33 modules have been divided into the 5 tracks. And so track 1 consists of the first 6 modules. And so you can start with track 1, and you can go, okay, you know what? This sounds really good, but I don't really want to necessarily jump in and invest into the entire thing because I'm just not totally sure. So for those folks, we can just start them with track 1. It's the first 6 modules, which really could have been its own micro certification because it's very complete, right? And then if someone thinks, yes, I love this, they want to they can continue going on. For people who think that they're all in, they've done their due diligence, they've vetted the program, they're comfortable with it, and they can purchase the entire program for a very deep discount. But, there's no obligation. So that's how you'd go about it. But, we accommodate people who are hearing impaired. There's closed captioning, there's transcripts, there's all kinds of tools, there's protocols. And what's really wonderful is there's a lot of brandable documents. Like, so say you're kind of new, you don't have the time and the energy to go creating your own questionnaire or your own assessment tools and, protocols, like where do you even start? So we created all of that, and they've been vetted and they've been reviewed, and then they're brandable, which means you could just pop off the IFNA logo and pop on your own logo. You keep the copyright intact in it, and that's what they're there for. They're there for people to use in practice. So it's a very comprehensive program. But if you're looking for something very basic, IFNA would not be for you. But if you're looking to take your skills to a new level, you definitely may want to consider it.
That is awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks for running us through that STAIN framework. That's super fun and memorable. Now I know. So that's awesome. Thanks so much for coming. And I'm sure that many people who are watching will be inspired and want to go deeper with their clients.
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Hailey.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.